Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Tone from Tone's Custom Flies back at you again. Today I felt like doing a quick demonstration on how I do some of the brush building for my body materials that I like to use. So we're going to start off by making some Squimpish body material brushes, and in the fashion that I like to do them is create a little bit more smoothness with some additional materials. I'll play around with different things, but this is just one of the many versions of stuff that I do for certain types of baitfish flies that I like to create with certain types of tapers and profiles. So the combination that I'm going to use today is very basic, just like the last one that we did with the craft fur doubling up, is going to be Squimpish hair and Icelandic sheep. And the Icelandic sheep is a little bit finer, and people are a little bit more weary of using it in saltwater applications because of its fine nature. But I feel that when you are doubling it with a material that it will kind of mesh and bind with, it just maintains a lot more rigidity in the mix. So we'll start out, and I'll put my little brush hook here backwards. Again, this is my setup you'll see in the other video, just basic, homemade table setup that I made for sitting in between my Norvise, where I can sit and free spin all of this as much as I'd like. And we'll show you how to catch the tension and everything to be able to evaluate. Oh, sorry, I had to get a good reach to get my brush going over there. Move some of this crap out of the way. All right. So, again, very simple technique. I'll take this, wrap it around the post, kink it with a little bit of tension, give her 4 or 5 wraps, bring her around the inside of the bend of the hook, put a little kink in that. Helps hold the tension across here a little bit better. A little bit of wax inside here. And this you're gonna find, or at least I find, I like the blend of these materials. Like I was saying, the finer nature, the Icelandic sheep hair will actually create an even smoother blend to the taper, where it's going to be almost seamless. You don't see the fiber ends kind of poking out of the profile as it goes as much as you would with, say a lot of bucktail or stronger, thicker synthetic fiber materials that you would use to build the taper and profile of a body. So for this, bring in my little table now that we're all waxed up, and I'm going to start cutting little sections off the patch of my Squimpish hair. Now this stuff is pretty long. It leaves a little bit on the outside edge so I can do longer flies with a single body material like this and be able to trim and taper even more off of the edges of it. So I like to leave it a little bit long, and I'll show you again, just barber technique. Split it, be able to take clumps between your fingers. And for this particular material, where I'm using it for the body material to build the profile up, I'm going to leave about 2 inches on the bottom side of the wire. So when that all wraps, as you're wrapping it, the more concentrically you wrap it forward when you're building the front end of the taper with the brush itself, it'll start to flare up a little bit more and more because of the compact nature of the materials in there. So all of those shorter fibers that I'm going to leave at that 2-inch mark below here are actually going to start sticking up, in which case I can come in with my scissors from the back side and start tapering down the cuts to make a smoother head. So I like to leave those out just a little bit. And these, they don't need to be as thick as some of the other brushes that I make as far as the density of the material that we're going to be putting inside here. So I'll just sit here and cut up a few clumps. Just lay it down. You'll be able to see it's kind of transparent as far as the volume going through and sighting. You can see, because of the vibrant color of this deck right here, how thick the material actually is in there. And it's not as thick as I would normally do it because we're going to be building taper with both the front end of the material, the long part sticking out towards the backside, and the bottom end here with these butts that we're going to taper after the fact once we use them to tie in the fly. So I'll pull them just a little bit more snug than that. I want another small piece just to fill in that last gap at the end. And when I'm doing this with body material, for a lot of these flies, I'm tying within the majority of them. I mean, we could do 5-6 inch with a little bit of trimming. Primarily, I like to hit 7 to 9 inches as a good average for the length that I like to play with on this material. Ooh, sorry about that, yeah. But it works. So that's about a good density right there. I could still see the wire through the material. I could still see the deck underneath the material and the wire itself. And we're gonna be adding our second material on top. Now this Icelandic sheep's hair here, you wanna kind of play with it and separate any of these fibers because they will tangle themselves, and that's the beauty and the curse of using this material. So when you're using it in conjunction with other materials, say in this brush, it will kind of wrap and bind and it will gain more rigidity. If you used it by itself in a brush or in a less controlled bodybuilding environment by itself as its own independent material, you're going to want to bring a comb with you for sure. So I'll just take this, cut it really close to the bottom ends. So you're going to get a lot of buildup, a lot of bulk in that. Most of that is going to come out. And again, about the same distance on the backhand side of this. We'll pull that about 2 inches towards the south side, towards me of that wire. And it might look like we're going to create a really hard line up here with both of these materials lining up like that the way they do. But once this material starts blending in, it'll smooth out and build that bulk without showing too many fibers through the actual hump of the profile. And you don't need a whole lot. So I mean, that was a pretty sizable clump that I took out of there before, but 2 of these clumps across a whole 6 to 7 inch brush is gonna just about do it. We're just looking for the texture, the length, and it'll help fill in those gaps and make it a more consistent volume throughout the entirety of the brush. So now with these, I feel pretty comfortable with that. And you can use this technique with all kinds of different fibers. You can add flash to it, you can add color accents. I've been dabbling with some feather work and some ostrich in there. That's going to be a fun one. I'll save that for its own independent video, but this is still the 101, 102 brush building seminar over here. So I'll just take this, create a little bit of tension, get my pinch point over here, bring that wire down, loop it, lock it with a few wraps here. Now the only difference between this and the last brushes that we've been doing are this side over here. There's enough length and enough weight that when I remove this deck, there's a chance that once I start spinning this, that momentum might make this section slip a little bit. So what I'm going to do before I remove the deck is just pull this, put some tension right here on this spot so I can just crimp that a bit, then come back, create my hard line of material where it's going to lay. So I have my hard line here, which is already under tension. This one over here that I'm going to maintain with my fingers, pull the deck right out. Now in this situation with the longer fibers, once I start spinning, there's enough space under here and nothing's gonna Nothing's gonna hit or move. It will become a little bit tangly while these fibers become consistent and start meshing and blending with each other, but we'll take it in phases. So now, the one thing that you got to watch out for with longer fibers is on this backside here, you don't want anything to slip and start rolling out and then finding its own gap and then entangling itself in there independently. So this is going to be a little bit on the loose side and a very light pick out just to get any of those long fibers loosened up right away. And I know immediately that this is not the tension that I want it to be, so I'm not really putting any serious pressure on that. Now you can see I'm taking out a lot of that fluff from the bottom side of that sheep's hair, but I'm going to come back and put more tension on her because I don't want to be pulling out the length of these materials. That's what we're going for. We're just freeing up in stages some material that's going to get trapped and tangled from the spinning, and then come back. We'll put a little bit more tension on there. And see, at this point we've got some good tension. That hook shank starts lifting up and riding at, it's 35-40 degrees probably at this point. Just put a little bit of pressure on this and come back and start picking this out. Now you can already tell that it looks like there's a significant amount of fibers that are going to be trapped in here. This is the most time-consuming part of the build, at least from my perspective. To be able to free all this stuff up in a way that you are comfortable with the consistency and the volume of material that is stuck in there and sticking out for use. So, most effective way, especially with lighter pressure, is to do it on a diagonal. It'll tend to pull those things out a little bit easier as opposed to doing it straight on. And you can already see a couple of spots where I really want to free some more up. And you're going to lose some. Some fiber, especially when you're working with longer fiber materials, is gonna stay trapped in there and it's gonna wrap and bind around the wire. Why I do this in multiple stages really is to mitigate as much of that as possible. So the idea is that I'm going to take this within the first spin, put it under just enough tension to loosen up some of those materials, knowing that they will bind back down again, putting it under tension again and spinning it up a second time, doing a little bit harder pick so we pick out all of the underfur. And then the third spin of tension should be our final one, where we're going to free all the material out of there that we can, assuming that a small portion of it is going to get locked in there, unfortunately. But once you start seeing the concentric style wraps within that wire, you'll evaluate, all right, how tight is it? How close are these wraps? Do I need to keep going? And I'll see there's a section up here where I know I can free some more fibers. There's a section in here that I know could be put under more tension as far as the wire being twisted. And a spot in here that I could probably free up a couple of more things. So I like the tension that it's at now. And this kind of detail is the stuff that's really going to save your ass. It's not fun when you have to go through building a fly and then having the material fail on you for any kind of reason. When that stuff starts coming out, it's very annoying because you're losing tension from the material coming off of the tension that you built in the wire. And then once that starts happening, more and more starts coming out until you're left with just a wire with a little bit of material that's locked in there somehow on a hook. So the idea is you want to build these things so they don't fall apart. I feel like that's most of the reason why most people have started to build and design their own flies. So I'll come back I'm just going to reset my hook here. And I hope that can hold that kind of tension right there. And I'll just give her another rip. So I know that I've freed up most of this stuff, and I'm not too concerned once it starts laying down about material being caught up on the wire itself from spinning, just being tangled with itself above the wire. And that's very easy to get out. So now I can already feel that tension really increase. So this theoretically should be our final pick out. And what we should see when we start to expose the wire is a nice even distribution of turns, very tight, and we should see little to no fibers coming off of the wire itself, or coming out of the wire rather. So give a little test. Got a relatively clean brush, and just kind of hit it from all sides. You'll really know once you start doing it side to side like this and smoothing it out. And just a little bit of underfur, no long fibers trapped in there, which means we're locked in there pretty darn good. So after that, you could see how that Icelandic sheep really smooths everything out on top of the Squimpish hair. So that is a combination of materials that I use fairly often. It's very simple to do. You know, as far as brush building, I think it gives a really clean taper to the body itself. It's very easy to trim and shape in addition to that, and being, you know, not super stiff of a series of materials, you can kind of cater the density to whatever you need. If you wanted to use a shorter volume for your wraps, you can make it a little bit bushier and then increase the profile diameter. You know, other direction too. Keep it more sparse, lay it a little bit smoother and slim down that profile if you like, but there's always options. So now that I'm satisfied with the way that this brush looks as far as length, consistency, and I mean, we're looking, you know, with the materials chosen, what is that, about 6, 7, so we're looking like a 12 to 14 inch wide brush right here. It's perfect for that 6 to 8 inch fly. I'm going to come through with my wire scissors. 1 snap there, 2 snap there. Put little kinks in the end of here. And then just to keep it clean for storage sake, woo! Give her a quick how you doing over there? And there you go. The Squimpish Icelandic Sheep bodybuilding brush. All right. Thanks for checking this out. Hope you all learned something again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.